Hi, welcome to In the Rough with Angie. This is part two of Erik Erikson's 8 Stages of Human Development, where I'm interviewing my mother. So, in this part, she is going over the last 4 stages of the human development. So, if you haven't listened to part one, go back and listen to that as well. And I hope it blesses you.
This is identity versus role confusion, and this is 12 to 18. So the kids are focusing on what's the big question, Angie?
Uh, who am I?
Who am I? Do you remember that as a teenager, figuring out who am I?
I remember, yeah, identity roles, right? Like
Yes.
figuring out what your identity is. And a big thing that's hard to do at that age is not just morphing into what you think your peers are going to accept you as, like the identity your peers will accept you as, but owning who God has made you to be, right? Which can be a hard thing to do. And that's where I would put my faith into it. Like their identity and who God has made them is who they are. But it's really tempting at this age to want to please our friends, right? Or other groups, or say, hey, if I can dress like this person, maybe they'll be friends with me. Or if I do this behavior that maybe I shouldn't do, well, maybe they'll accept me into their group and then I'll be a part of it. So this age is huge, I think, for, like you said, identity. There's so much to it that if you haven't been praying for your kids, maybe now's the time.
Yes. Now's the time, yes. So, and that is what you are doing in that age of teenage years. You're experimenting with roles. And we know there's all kinds of different students and groups that form in that once past fifth grade. Even fifth grade, I would see groups kind of form. You could tell who's going to be kind of this kind of group and who's going to be this kind of group. But middle school, they even more so, they get into identifiable groups. In high school, for sure. So what students do then is they got to figure out what group do I fit in, and they may try one group for a while and they go, that's not the group, and then they try to get into another group, and then they find their people. We tend to find our people at some point, and but are they really positive for our growth? But as a teenager, it's hard to evaluate that.
Right.
So that's where you as a parent have to go in and try to really be having conversations with your child about friends, and one of the things that Dad and I discovered early on, and I really am glad we did, but we discovered it because we were watching these other parents that were like a step, several years ahead of us. Their kids now were teenagers, ours were elementary and younger. We tried to learn from this couple in our church, and what were, Marie and it was a gas, what are they doing? How did they respond to their children? How did they turn out? And we talked to them about it. And so I think having a role model as a parent when you're in the teenage years is important. Having
Yeah, that's
someone
good.
that you can talk to, because you can't see it all. You don't see where it's going, and then talking to your child, that relationship building. I have a student in one of my college classes, and his big thing, he's going to be a teacher if he wants to be fifth grade. His big thing is to establish relationships with your students, establish relationships with the parents, establish relationships with your colleagues, in the school, with the community. You're trying to have relationships as a teacher, but as a parent, you need to have a relationship with the parents of the children that your kids hang with.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what we learned from Marie and Bill Gast, is have friends. And we did. It was really cool. We were blessed with having some families where they had some children our age. And that you guys went to school and you became good friends, that kind of thing. In college, and you knew them in college because they followed kind of a pathway like you. So that's something I'd encourage parents to do. Know the parents of their friends. And especially in those years where your child is starting now to do sleepovers, do you want your child to go to that house? Are they going to see something that you really don't want them seeing? So know the parents of your children. That's important. So hang with groups, hopefully they have the same values that you do. So back to the child though, is if they don't find out who they are, they're kind of hopping from group to group. They may get into something that, they're confused, they're emotionally unhappy. So they may get into something to make them happy, which can be unhealthy. So it's just that communication that we have with our child. And as my student said, relationships. Do we have a relationship with our child? Do we have a relationship with our child's parents? What's our communication with the teachers so that we know what's going on at school?
Yeah.
And it's not being a helicopter parent. I think that's really important what you said. But helicopter parent is almost like a bug. We as teachers know who helicopter parents are. We try to show them that we're partners and just to be calm about it, let's work on it. But you as parents need to ask those questions and never be afraid or never think you're out of step by asking questions about your child. Just be polite and let them know that we want a partnership. I think that's important. Okay, so it's hard on everybody, teenage years. It's hard on the parents. But I gotta tell you, my 3 girls were pretty good. My 3 girls.
You're nice.
And I liked how you guys would call me. You'd tell me where you're going, what you're doing. For the most part, I feel we had good communication. But, where we did not have communication, I need to, as a parent now, I reflect back. What could I have done better? How does that help me in my relationship with my child? Well, I can say, Angie, I'm sorry I did that, and I didn't know at the time. I wasn't thinking. I didn't understand that concept yet, but I understand it. And I can now share that with you so you can contemplate your approach.
Yeah, and we're all learning as parents.
Yes.
Unless we're researching the stages religiously, we're all learning in the process too. And then each kid is different. So that, I like what you said, forgive ourselves and then work on the areas we need to work on. No parent has got it figured out perfect.
No. So you forgive yourself, you figure out what is the right thing to do. You have friends to talk to, relationships. I mean, don't do it in a vacuum. Do it with people,
Mm-hmm.
So what can we do to encourage the teenager? Encourage them to have self-expression. What's their style? What's their interests? Expose them to diverse experiences, travel. I think, I'm thinking of when you have children in your home up until 18, you want to do some trips with them, some family trips. That's important. Go to Disney World, go to museums, go see art exhibits, go see different parts of the country. If you can afford that, do it. Because then you're exposing them to the world.
It's true.
Promote critical thinking. Ask them open-ended questions. What do you think? This is in this 6 to 12. They are able to think rationally. They are into abstract thinking. You can talk with them. So ask them questions. Have them tell you how you feel. At the dinner table, which we all should do this at the dinner table, just have some family conversations. It doesn't have to be arguments, but it can be viewpoints.
Arguments. Let the fighting begin.
Yeah, you don't want that to happen. See how you can make that be smooth, right? Okay, and then show them that they can be resilient, meaning that if they had some failures, think about what can I do better next time and pop back and do again.
Yeah.
Get back on the water skis and try it again. Okay. We're on stage 6, Ange, and I'm going to try to quickly go through these. But now that we're in these stages, let's see. These next stages are parents are somewhat involved, but not as much anymore. These are now you have become 18 as a person, and you are going to go through these next few stages basically on your own, thinking, problem solving, but you have friends, you have relationships, so you're not totally alone. But you're more responsible now for yourself in your decision making. So this next stage is 18 to 40. That's a big gap, really. You think about it, 18 to 40. 18 as a high school graduate. 40 is someone that's been in their career for a while. But this is the stage of intimacy versus isolation. And here's where the key things that are happening, the dating, of course, right? 17, 18, 19, people are dating. They're figuring out what they like about the person that they're dating, what kind of person they want to spend more time with. And then they're also, at the same time they're dating, they're trying to build a career. What am I going to do with my life? Most of us have to work. I just, those two parent home, two family, mom and dad, or two parents in the family, or whatever the family structure is, we all have to work pretty much. And it's a lifelong thing of working. So you want to get into something that you like. And so that's what we need to help kids do is, do you like horses? Do you like dogs? Do you like engineering? Do you like painting? What is it you like? And then at this 18, 19, even as early as 16, we should be exploring careers. And what do we want to maybe pursue?
And sometimes people will focus more on one than the other. So some people during this stage focus more on relationships, like the relationships they want. And then other people like put the relationships on the back burner and they say, I'm all about my career. I'm going to school. That's the only thing I'm doing. I'm not trying to make friends. I'm not trying to meet anybody. I'm just trying to this. I think the challenge is how do we do both of those at the same time? How do we be open in our relationships but be dedicated in our work? I think I focused more on relationships. I cared more about relationships than I did career. So that was my journey. And I mean, it's good, right? We should always be focusing on relationships, but if we just focus on one over the other one's going to start to be affected and not grow. Same for the people that focus more on work than relationships. Their relationships are going to suffer, but maybe they'll like be the most successful person in the family or whatever.
But that's, it's life balance, Ange, life balance. We as humans, we are very diversified. We are intellectual, meaning cognitive thinking. We are social. We need friends. We're emotional. We have different thoughts and feelings about things. We like to do stuff in community. So what you're saying is, and I've seen this, is or either get so focused on relationships, there goes the grades in high school, there goes the grades in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we now are not looking at our purpose. We're not looking at our career down the road. If we're so into the career, then we kind of get into the mid-20s. We're kind of like, whoa, we're not real comfortable even with dating. We don't have a social part of us, a social presence, a social way of getting along with people. So I think it's life balance. But this is where I'm saying now the responsibility goes on that 18-year-old on up. You've got to do something with your life. You've got to problem solve it. You've got to figure out your purpose and ask questions and go to people that can mentor you. And that's where you got to be careful, because is someone that looks like they could be a good mentor may not be. So you have to even research someone that you want to be your mentor so they don't take advantage of you. And I don't have an example that I really want to share at this point, but I've seen it in young people. Sometimes they choose the wrong mentor and they think because that person has been a really strong person in this, they're going to be a good mentor for them. They may not be. They need to ask questions about them.
Yeah. Remember Chris Farley living in a van down by the river?
Yeah.
He went in and tried to motivate the kids.
Yeah.
But now living in a van down by the river kind of is a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Traveling, you live in your vehicle, you see the world, I don't know. It's times change, right? Where certain things you would try to steer some away from, which you're probably still going to want to steer a child away from living in a van down by a river. But times change too, right? Like the things we aspire to do change. So maybe now people are more into like social media and being an entrepreneur, when before maybe it was like keeping your 9-to-5 job secure for as long as you can. So like with the times that change, that process can look different too. So how can we as parents know, I went through this, but my child is living in a different way now, so I have to adapt to that and then figure out what's going to help them.
Right. It's understanding the generations. You as a
Yeah.
millennial, you have a certain value system and things that you hold as your principles, but what is the value system of your child's generation, and where will it be its next step? So yeah, and we have to, as parents, have to not close our eyes and be an ostrich and stick our head in the sand. We have to be able to know what's out there for my child and what kind of environment are they operating in. And when you talk a digital world, that's where we are. Going to college now, you can get online degrees. You don't have to drive to a college, sit in a college classroom. Classes I've been teaching the last 3 years have been Zoom, online classes. So yes, it is a different world. So that parent needs to always know kind of world is my child operating in, and then what am I coming from as a parent. But now as the adult, we're switching now over to when I'm talking about these next 3 stages, the adult is the one really responsible for themselves now. But so this is where we as parents up until this point have taught them how to problem solve, how to think rationally, how to go step by step, so they can do that on their own now when they're in that stage, intimacy versus isolation. How are they working on strong relationships? And going back to your thing, Angie, about living down by the river in a van like Chris Farley. Yes.
I kind of want to do that. Sorry.
But you know what, Angie? There's this, not a tangent here, but there is a show called Cody and Kelly. It's a Facebook group, and they have adventures, and it's on platforms as well. But that's what they did. I think probably about early 30s. The husband was an accountant, and the wife, I think, they've never said, I think she did something with a chef or something. They decided at that early 30s to mid 30s, they wanted to do a traveling Facebook group show.
Oh, yeah.
And they did it for the first 2 years or 3 years in a tent, and they went all around the nation, and they would film everything and tell a little story.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Good. They're so good. And now 2 years ago, they decided to get a truck and to get a camper on their truck, like a 2-door, 4-door truck. And they have a camper on top of it. And so she's going to sell a cookbook. And so she's got these wonderful cooking skills, does it out on the trail, shows how she sets up everything. It looks just like gourmet meal. And he's fulfilling his now purpose is he likes to film and tell stories by this beautiful scenery. Yeah, beautiful. So, and we also know that more and more people are working remotely. Your dad and I do that. Being a college professor teaching online, you can be in Florida, we can be in Texas, we can be in Wisconsin, and we still, as long as we have a computer and an internet connect, we can teach a lesson.
Yeah.
So it's a different world, and it's something that I think is very much a lot of opportunities for people like your daughter now. She's going through. Okay, so that's at 18 to 40. And the next stage is it's called stagnation. The positive one is generativity. That's meaning being generous, wanting to give back, versus stagnation. Now this age group is 40 to 65. So what's happening? These are middle adults. They're focusing on the next generation. They're saying, hey, I want to help these people behind me. I want to pull them up. Just like our pastor one time said, always look to pull someone up behind you, and then you reach up, have someone pull you up. So that's that mentor relationship. And that's what's happening in this stage is we are looking, I look to help those teachers, people that want to be teachers. I've been wanting to do that for several years. I want to teach teachers. I want to teach those that are interested in teaching how to be a really effective teacher. And so I'm pulling up that group of people. I need someone now to keep me pulled up so that I can continue to work on my purpose, because our purpose changes throughout our life. But I still need someone and I'm looking for that mentor to pull me up to that next stage. Because Angie and I have written a purpose class together, and it's probably been 15 years ago that we wrote it, but we've taught it together. I've taught it by myself, but it needs to go to a new level. So I'm ready to take it to a new level. That's what my purpose part I'm talking about. So Angie, that's that mid-age. We're trying to give back. We do it in our parenting. We do it in mentoring. More people are in this age are getting involved in the community. You know, the Angie and her husband and her daughter were here. This is just speaking to your audience. They were here in our town where we have a muskie festival. And every little town in northern Wisconsin, or any little town probably anywhere nationwide, has a special little community festival, right? Ours is the Muskie Festival because muskies are plentiful here in our lakes. So community involvement is what I wanted to get to. It took a lot of people to pull off the Muskie Festival, right? Because we have fishing trips going on all over, catching fish and bringing the fish in. We have, the parade that's got to be organized. We have, the fairground or the place where they do the carnival stuff. And we just have events throughout the whole 3-day weekend. So that takes a community to put that together. And our area is really a good community to pull together. We also host the international cross-country skiing race, which is called the Birkebeiner. That brings a whole community together, and people from outside of our community come in and help. That's volunteering. That's getting involved in your community. Mm-hmm. We need to do that in this stage. Okay, so Angie, that stage, do you have any thoughts for someone who is going to be entering that stage?
So 465.
Uh-huh.
What I've just realized about myself is, they say like that's about your midlife crisis time, 40, right? But I think you're thinking back to what you've done like 18 until this point, right? Like you're thinking about that past season. And that's where people can have a midlife crisis, they say, right? Where you're like, well, I wish when I was 18, I would have done this instead of doing that. So now that I'm 40, I'm going to go back to that time. I don't know if I'm saying this right. And I'm going to purchase that sports car, or I'm going to do something daring, or I'm going to anything, right? There's a natural desire, I think, to look back and want to explore the areas that you wish you could have. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I actually have a friend, she has a podcast called More Than Your Age, and she interviews people about them doing things that they've always wanted to do, but maybe they thought that now because I'm this age, I can't do it. But they actually go back. Like, for example, if you wanted to be an actor growing up and then you never followed that dream, why not follow it now at 40, right? Or you wanted to do this, what's stopping you from doing it now? So I think those are my thoughts. What I've been thinking of, like in my 40s now, is I think back to my youth and the way I could have done things, but give myself grace, right? Know that there was a path that I chose that God worked out. But then realizing, like, so what if I'm 40 now? I can still pursue something. The age is not holding me back from pursuing, right?
Right, Angie. We can pursue right up until our last week of life. You know what I'm saying? There's some people that can do that, mentally have a full mind right to the end. I never give up. I always have dreams. And my dad, I remember him saying that. He's always had dreams, and he would work on them. He was an artist. And so we need to always keep our dreams alive and just maybe apply them in different ways as we go through the stages. Art has been with me the whole time. I've loved art since a little girl, and I still enjoy it. And so I did it with my grandchildren. And I don't do it as much alone anymore like I used to. But yes, pursue your passions throughout all of your life and your dreams. Mm-hmm. And your purpose, right? Always purpose. Yes. So that's that stage is we're working on our parenting skills if we are a mother or father. We're working on our career, and we are getting more engaged in our community. And what did we learn for that? We learned concern for future generations, for those children that are coming up behind us, those generations coming up behind us. But we also need to look to the future as where are we going, right? And how have we come to this point? And so also at this point, I think a person starts to looking back, what worked in my childhood? What maybe, why am I this way I am? How will I come through all those stages? And if you're not happy with it, that's what I want to talk about in this next stage. Because this next stage is called ego integrity versus despair. So that's stage 8. And this is 65 on up. This is an interesting stage. Many of the people are still working early on stage, and many people worked into their 80s and 90s. Some people just have that capacity to function and function well. So what happens in this stage is the adulthood at this time reflects back on their lives and accomplishments. Perhaps they didn't have time before. When you're working full time and you're caring for children, you don't have time to do a lot of self-analysis. And now when our children are grown, we can have more time for self-analysis. When our career, maybe we're starting to work not as many hours, we have more time to reflect. That's a good thing, but we don't want to give ourselves too much time to think that way. Here's why. Because we can start to become despair. You can say, I regret doing that. I regret doing that. Okay, regret it. Forgive yourself. And if you feel you need to talk to someone, tell them, I have regretted what I did there. I really have. But I want you to know that I'm not that person anymore, but I'm moving forward on that. And I have for a while. So that you can leave this earth with feeling good about yourself. You reach that you made some accomplishments. Look at the accomplishments, only to honor that you were able to do that God gave you the ability and the environment to do those things.
Yeah.
And you and I both believe, God has been with us on this whole journey, and we were just fortunate that he's been with us all of the journey that we've had so far, and he'll be with us to the next point. You and I believe that. So that's what this stage begins to believe. They're saying, I don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to be here on earth. Okay. So I want to make the best use of my time. I want to make sure I'm helping people, being a good problem solver, being a good decision maker about my health, about caring for myself. So I'm not going to be a burden on someone. These are things that people are thinking about in this age. And so if they have integrity, where they feel they lived a fulfilling life, they've addressed those regrets. Okay, we're going to let that go. If they have to fix something, I'll fix it. But now we're going to talk about what are the things I enjoyed and what can I continue to enjoy. So for some people, it might be painting, it might be storytelling. I think an important thing is to have friends. Have friends your age. You have your children and you have your grandchildren, but they can't give you everything. You've got to have friends your age. So this is something I've told my husband that, right now we're not in a church. And that kind of bothers me because I've always enjoyed church, been in church my whole life. But right now we haven't found that church that fits the stage we're in right now, or the goals that we have, or the thoughts we have about church. So, but I think we need to find a church because we need to have friends our age, or friends that are adults believing things that we believe. Because that now is pretty much who we're going to be talking with. We don't want to bother our children all the time. I love talking to my daughters. I love it. But I know that you guys have a life too. And so I've got to make sure that I'm okay and I'm having some relationships as well. So that's what I see. What can you help those people with in that stage? I talk about their life. Sometimes people don't want to hear about it, so then write about it. They don't want to hear about it. Still have projects that you want to work on. Do community service, do volunteerism. If you have a past capacity to still work, maybe not work full time, but work. So those are some things that I've kind of come through my life, looking at these 8 stages, is understanding the 8 as a teacher, because you want to know where your children are coming from as you're in a certain grade level of teaching. And it's important for us as parents, as we're nurturing and growing our children, that we recognize those stages. And then as a person, just as you, Angie, and me, Mom, me, Sue, we needed to make sure we're taking care of our own life in the stage.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I love it. Thank you for going over all this. It's helping me think about how to interact with my daughter and then how to view the stage that I'm currently at and what I need to do there. So I like it a lot. It's super helpful. Like you said, for the parent, grandparent, if a grandparent is raising the child more, or a teacher, and then our own personal selves. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Angie.
Oh, you're welcome. And realized we could go on about this. We could do an hour for each stage. There's so much to cover in each stage. So I'm going to put a couple addresses in the description so that people can look up what are these stages. They can research it more on their own too. Different websites they can go to. So I'll put that in the description so people have that. And is there any closing thoughts? Is there any advice you have for people that maybe feel like they're stuck in one stage, or maybe they're having trouble getting their child through the next stage?
I think, if you're going to put some information out for people, the URLs for like Erik Erikson and the 8 stages, I have a URL that I can send you that I kind of was following today that had it from the viewpoint of the teacher and the parent and what we can do in those situations. I can give you that. So that would be a more in-depth, I think it's a 30-page reading on an article that was written, but
Yeah.
really good. So I think researching, reflecting, but try to move through it in a positive way. I guess, and be kind. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. That's right now kind of the stage I'm in is I believe kindness is so important. Being kind to
Yeah.
my family, being kind to my students, being kind to my husband, So I guess work on yourself, but respect yourself and
Yeah.
value yourself.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah, you be good to you now.
I will, and you be good to you too now, Ange.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
And I'm sure I'll have you back on again for something else
Okay, I love
because
it.
you got lots of knowledge to give out to the world.
Oh, you're nice. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, dear.